My daughter just bought a lake house, my mother announced to a room full of people, wine glass raised high. And guess what? She's giving it to me for my birthday. The crowd clapped, cameras flashed, laughter echoed. I stood there frozen. No, I wasn't. I hadn't. But my mother smiled like she already owned the deed. I handed her a small velvet box. She snatched it, stormed off, and minutes later came back empty-handed. I threw it in the trash, she said coldly. There's no room here for selfishness. She never even opened it. That box held the keys to a brand new $15,000 car. And if you think that's the worst part, you haven't heard what she did next. My name is Alyssa Monroe. I'm 32, a product chemist for a luxury skincare company in downtown Chicago. From the outside, it looks like I have everything: a high-paying job, my own apartment, a new car, a close-knit family. But that image hides what no one sees: a mother who only shows up when there's money involved. I was the daughter who paid her bills, answered her guilt trip texts, sent Christmas gifts she never acknowledged. And when I finally bought something for myself, a lake house I dreamed of for years, she tried to take that too. But I didn't scream. I didn't argue. I just smiled and planned my response. Before we dive in, please hit that like button if you've ever been guilted by a family member. Drop a comment below if you've ever given too much, only to be punished for not giving more. And don't forget to subscribe if you believe real family is about love, not blood. Now let me tell you how one quiet gift turned into a storm that tore my entire family apart. My parents divorced when I was 12. They tried to keep things balanced: 2 months with mom in Aurora, 2 months with dad in Evanston. It was a logistical nightmare. New schools, new routines, constant unpacking and repacking. But the worst part wasn't the chaos. It was the difference in how I was treated. My dad remarried within a year. Her name was Sarah, a retired elementary school teacher with the softest voice and the sharpest instincts. She didn't try to replace my mom, she just cared. Genuinely, patiently, consistently. She helped with my homework. She remembered my allergy appointments. She learned my favorite ice cream flavor. Sarah had a son, Ethan, 4 years younger than me. We bonded over video games, late-night snack runs, and arguing about whose turn it was to wash the dishes. Dad was happy. Their home was warm. Table. My mom, Donna, took a different route. She remarried 3 years later to a man named Richard. He had a daughter named Brittany who was 2 years older than me. And cold, Brittany could have frozen fire. The two of them acted like I was a weekend guest they couldn't wait to see gone. So by 16, I made the choice no teenager should have to make. Mom, I told her I want to live with Dad full-time. She didn't fight me, didn't cry. She just nodded and said, if that's what you want. But her eyes didn't look sad. They looked relieved, like she'd been waiting for me to leave. From then on, I lived with Dad, Sarah, and Ethan. And while I still saw Mom on holidays or when she texted, our connection faded into something shallow. She posted more about Brittany's daughter than she ever asked about me. I graduated high school, got into Northwestern, majored in chemistry, and Sarah and Dad paid for everything. Not because they had to, but because they believed in me. Mom didn't even show up to my graduation. I landed a job right out of college, then got promoted twice in 4 years. Skincare chemistry, who knew, right? But I loved it. I loved making formulas that worked, seeing reviews from real customers, and watching my paycheck grow. By 30, I'd saved enough to buy a modern apartment in downtown Chicago. And now 2 years later, I was ready for my next dream. A lake house. Not a mansion. Not some flashy influencer thing. Just a quiet cottage near Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, somewhere I could drive to on weekends, sip coffee on the porch, maybe host the people who'd always shown up for me. Dad, Sarah, Ethan and his girlfriend. That was the plan. That was my peace. Until I told my mom. And she turned it into war. The weekend I told Dad and Sarah about the lake house was one of the best nights I've had in years. I remember pulling into their driveway in Evanston with a bottle of wine and a folder full of printed listings. Sarah opened the door before I even knocked. She hugged me tight, then pulled me straight into the kitchen where the smell of her pot roast hit me like a warm blanket. Dad was there too, standing by the counter with his usual bear hug ready. Ethan and his girlfriend Emma were already setting the table. The whole house buzzed with quiet, cozy energy. It always did. You look like someone with big news, Sarah said, handing me a glass of wine. I grinned. I do. I waited until dinner was on the table. Then I reached into my bag, pulled out the folder, and said, "So, I'm buying a house." Everyone froze. "What kind of house?" Ethan asked, leaning in. "A lake house, by Lake Geneva. Just a couple hours from here." Sarah's eyes lit up first. "Alyssa, that's incredible." Dad looked at the listings, flipping through them like a proud coach. "These are beautiful," he said. "You've worked hard for this. You deserve it." Emma clapped her hands. "We can visit, right?" "Of course," I said. "I want it to be a space for all of us. Quiet weekends, bonfires, fishing, maybe even a little dock." We spent the rest of dinner talking about porch furniture and boat rentals. Sarah was already picking out paint colors. Dad asked about the fish in the lake. Ethan offered to help build a fire pit. I left their house that night floating. That's what love feels like. The next Saturday, I had dinner with my mom. It was different. Her house in Aurora was, as I remembered it, a little too quiet, a little too neat, with that faint smell of potpourri and tension. Richard was there, sitting silently at the head of the table like a fixture. Brittany showed up late with her daughter Madison, who immediately disappeared into a coloring book and didn't look up once. I waited until we were halfway through Mom's usual lasagna. "I have some news," I said, trying to sound casual. Mom looked up, her fork midair. "I'm buying a lake house," I said, then smiled. "I've been saving, and I think I'm ready. Something small, peaceful, close to nature." The silence after that wasn't the good kind. Mom's eyes narrowed slightly. She set her fork down, dabbed her mouth with a napkin, and said, "A lake house. How lovely. You know, my 60th birthday is coming up soon." She paused, then leaned forward, her tone shifting. "That would make such a perfect gift." I blinked. "Sorry." "The house," she said, smiling like it was obvious. "It would be the most incredible birthday present. We could all use it. I mean, it's not like you'll be there every weekend." I stared at her. "You want me to give you the house?" "Why not?" she said, waving her hand like I was overreacting. "Family is supposed to share. Richard and I could retire up there eventually. Brittany could take Madison for summers. We'd keep it nice, of course." I was speechless. My stomach twisted. "I wasn't buying it for anyone else," I said quietly. "I want a space of my own. You're welcome to visit, but..." Brittany rolled her eyes. "Come on, Alyssa. You make good money. Don't be stingy." "It's not about money," I said, heat rising to my cheeks. "It's about ownership. This is something I've worked for." Mom's voice went cold. "I think you should really reconsider what kind of daughter you want to be, after everything I've done for you." The rest of the meal blurred. Every bite of lasagna turned to ash in my mouth. Richard didn't say a word. Brittany smirked every time I looked up. Mom shifted back into small talk like nothing had happened, but her eyes were steely. I left early. When I got home, I poured a glass of wine, sat on the couch, and stared at my phone. She'd asked for a house, a full house, as a birthday gift. I thought back to the little things I'd done over the years. Sent her money when she said her heat got shut off. Bought groceries, paid her phone bill twice. I told myself I was being a good daughter, helping when she needed it. But now it felt different. It felt like a test, and I'd just failed the final. Because apparently, if I wasn't willing to give up something major, something sacred, then I wasn't worth anything to her. That night I made a decision. I was buying that lake house, and she wasn't getting a single inch of it. I didn't talk to my mother for 2 weeks after that dinner. Not because I was avoiding her. Not really. I just needed space to breathe, to think, to not feel like a child again who owed someone for existing. Meanwhile, I called David, my college friend turned real estate agent. "Remember how I mentioned wanting to look at lake properties?" I asked him over the phone. "Absolutely," he said. "Are we doing this?" "Yeah," I said. "We're doing this." Over the next few weeks, he sent me listing after listing. Some were too remote, some were overpriced, some just didn't feel like me. But then one afternoon, my phone buzzed with a new message. "Found it. Just hit the market this morning. You need to see this place." He wasn't wrong. I drove out that same day. A 2-bedroom cedar cottage wrapped in a wide porch sitting just feet from the lake. You could hear the water from the gravel driveway. The trees surrounding the lot made it feel like its own world. I didn't even hesitate. "I want it," I told David before we'd finished walking through the kitchen. 3 weeks later, the keys were in my hand. I took a photo on the front steps, still in my blazer and heels from work, and posted it to Instagram. She works, she saves, she closes. First lake house. Dreams do come true. The likes rolled in. Friends commented with heart emojis and champagne bottles. Ethan sent a bunch of fire emojis and said, "Save me a spot by the fire pit." And then my phone rang. Mom. I stared at her name flashing across the screen, my stomach tightening. I picked up. I saw your post, she said. No, hello. Just that sharp tone she used when she felt left out. Oh, yeah, I replied. I closed yesterday. There was silence. You didn't even ask me if I liked it, she said. I blinked. I didn't think I needed to. You're lucky I do, she said. I'll be gracious and accept it. Accept what? The house, Alyssa. My throat went dry. Mom, we've already had this conversation. She didn't pause. Didn't even flinch. I've dreamed of a cottage by the lake my whole life. And now my daughter finally has the means to give it to me. That's what children do. You don't just take from a family, you give back. I'm not giving you the house, I said, trying to stay calm. It's not a gift. I bought it. For me. That's when her voice cracked, not with sadness, but with performance. I can't believe you'd do this to me, she whispered. After everything I've sacrificed. I raised you. I gave you life. And now when I ask for one thing, you say no. She started crying. And I mean really crying like a toddler on the floor of a toy store. You won't even let me enjoy my birthday, she sobbed. I'm turning 60 and I get nothing. Not even a key to the house I told everyone about. Wait, what? You told people, what? That you were giving it to me, she said like it was obvious. You were supposed to surprise me. I told my friends. I told Richard's family. I told everyone. I sat in stunned silence, my mind racing. She hadn't just expected the house. She'd already claimed it, publicly. That's when the messages started. Texts, Facebook DMs, emails. Every few hours, another message. Have you thought about what I said the guest bedroom could be mine? I've been researching paint colors. I think sage green will be calming. I'm already picturing summers on the porch with Madison. And then, if you loved me, this wouldn't be a question. Sarah was the first one I told. We were having dinner at their place again, steak and roasted veggies, Ethan setting the table like he always did. I need to show you something, I said, pulling out my phone. She scrolled through the texts. Her face darkened. This is emotional blackmail, she said flatly. Dad looked over her shoulder, reading a few lines, then glanced up at me. Tell me you're not giving her the house. Of course not, I said. But it's escalating. He set his fork down. Alyssa, he said gently, your mother has never asked how you're doing without an angle. When you were 16, she let you walk out without a fight. She's only calling now because you have something she wants. You don't owe her anything. I wanted to believe that. But the guilt, it's hard to unlearn. Even when logic tells you you're being used, that voice in your head still whispers, she's your mom. Still, I ignored most of her messages. I only replied to the neutral ones. And when she mentioned the house, I just didn't engage. Until her 60th birthday. She sent a group text 2 weeks before. Excited to see everyone soon. Big party at our place. Food, friends, family. And Alyssa's got a surprise gift for me. Can't wait to see her face when I open it. I stared at that message for a full minute. She was setting the stage, telling a story I hadn't agreed to. A performance where I'd be the star and the fool. 2 days before my mother's birthday party, I stood in the middle of my living room staring at a small velvet jewelry box on my kitchen counter. Inside it, a single car key to a 2017 Toyota Corolla low-mileage reliable silver with gray cloth seats. I'd bought it outright from a dealership in Evanston, signed all the paperwork, and asked them to hold it until after the party. It wasn't a lake house, but it wasn't nothing either. It was a gift. Thoughtful, practical, generous. $15,000 paid in full. It wasn't about the money. It was about the line I had to draw. I had been raised unintentionally maybe to believe that love came with proof, that affection had to be demonstrated in receipts, and that saying no made you selfish. I thought if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, she'd finally see me as a daughter worth loving. But this lake house fiasco made something crystal clear. It was never about me. It was about what I could provide. And when I stopped providing, she turned on me. So I made a decision. I wasn't walking into that party defenseless. I'd bring a gift, a real one. One she could choose to accept or not. But this time I wouldn't let her rewrite the story. The day of the party, I dressed carefully. Simple black dress, hair straightened, light makeup. Neutral, polished, nothing flashy. I wanted to look calm, untouchable. I slipped the small box into my bag and drove to Aurora with a dull thud in my chest. Her house was full of people when I arrived. Neighbors, friends of Richard's, some co-workers I didn't recognize. Brittany was already there, holding a plastic wine glass and waving me over with her fake enthusiasm. Look who decided to show up, she said. Did you bring the surprise? I smiled, not answering, just nodded and kissed my mother on the cheek. She looked radiant in a way only people who are absolutely convinced of their own importance can. "Sweetheart," she said, guiding me to a seat next to her. "I'm so glad you're here." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "I really hope this is going to be as good as I think it is." I smiled again. Let her wonder. Let her build the moment in her mind frame by frame. The party went on for what felt like hours. Cheap wine, bland dip, small talk with people who barely remembered me. Every few minutes, someone would say how lucky my mom was, how beautiful the lake house looked, how generous I must be. Each comment tightened the knot in my chest. And then finally, she stood up and tapped her glass with a fork. "Everyone," she said, beaming. "I have something very exciting to share." My stomach sank. "My daughter Alyssa has given me the most incredible gift for my 60th birthday." Her hand reached toward me. "A lake house. Isn't that amazing?" The room broke into applause. I sat frozen. Not one person questioned it. Not one person looked surprised. It had become truth through repetition. A lie she'd practiced into belief. I stood slowly, reached into my bag, and handed her the box. "This is for you, Mom," I said. She opened it just a crack, then frowned. "What's this?" "It's a car key," I said. "To a newer car than the one you're driving. I had it wrapped and ready for you. We can pick it up tomorrow." She stared at me, then at the box, then back at me. "You didn't get me the house," she said louder now, her voice turning sharp. The room quieted. "No," I said, still calm. "I never said I would." "You embarrassed me," she snapped. "You humiliated me in front of everyone." She stood, dropped the box on the table, and walked out of the room. When she returned, the box was gone. "I threw it away," she said coldly. "There's no room here for greed." Some guests shifted uncomfortably. Others sipped their drinks and avoided eye contact. "But Brittany smirked. "You really showed your true colors tonight," she said to me. I didn't respond. Not with words. I just stood up, walked into the kitchen, opened the trash can, and there it was. The box. Still closed. Still untouched. I took it, and I left through the front door without saying goodbye. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, replaying every word, every look, every cheer that turned into a sneer. I didn't cry. Not because it didn't hurt, it did. But because something deeper had settled inside me. Clarity. She had never loved me without conditions. Not once. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to try to earn her love anymore. I was going to give that love to someone who'd earned it. Sad. The next morning, I drove straight to Evanston. Sarah opened the door in sweatpants, holding a mug of tea. "I have something for you," I said, stepping inside. I handed her the box. She opened it. Her breath caught. "Alyssa, no, I can't accept this." "Yes, you can," I said. "It was supposed to be Mom's." She threw it away without opening it. "But you've been the one showing up. Always." Tears filled her eyes. I hadn't cried the night before, but when she hugged me tight, shaking, I finally let go. I'd spent my whole life chasing the wrong kind of love. Now I was done. I didn't plan for this to be revenge. Not in the traditional sense. There were no lawsuits, no confrontations caught on camera, no grand takedown speeches. Just silence. And that silence, that's what really got her. The day after I gave Sarah the car keys, we drove to the dealership together. She kept glancing at me like she couldn't quite believe it was real. The Corolla sat parked out front with a red bow on the hood, one of those oversized novelty ribbons dealerships always use. The salesman handed Sarah the paperwork and the spare key while I stood beside her smiling. "I've never had a car this new," she whispered, her hands trembling slightly. "You deserve it," I said. "You've always made me feel like family. Now it's your turn." We took a picture together, Sarah leaning against the driver's side, me holding up the keys. She looked stunned, like someone who'd just won the lottery without buying a ticket. I posted the photo that night on Instagram and Facebook. When someone throws away a gift unopened, you give it to someone who's always shown up. This car found the right home. I didn't tag anyone, didn't name names, but people knew. The next morning, my phone blew up. First a missed call, then 5 more, then texts. "Alyssa, you need to give me that car. It was my birthday present. How dare you humiliate me like this? You're stealing from me. This isn't over." I didn't reply. I deleted every message. Because here's the thing about narcissists, they only spiral when you stop spinning with them. They only scream when you refuse to perform. And I was done performing. I blocked her number that afternoon. For a few weeks, it was blissfully quiet. Then one evening, I came home from work, tossed my purse on the couch, and was halfway through making dinner when someone started pounding on my front door. Not knocking, pounding. I looked through the peephole. It was her and Brittany, both standing there, their faces tight with rage. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. That didn't stop them. My mother shoved past me like she still owned the place. Brittany followed, arms crossed, jaw clenched. "You made me look like a fool," my mother hissed. "You embarrassed me in front of everyone." "You did that to yourself," I said calmly. "I never promised you that house. You should have corrected me." "I did? At the party? In front of everyone?" Her face twisted. "And then you gave my car to your stepmother." "Correction," I said. "You threw the car away, without even opening the box." She opened her mouth, then shut it again. I could see her trying to pivot, trying to find an angle. "You should have told me what was in it. You never gave me the chance." I was upset. And now I asked. "Now you're here demanding something you threw away." Again. She stepped closer. "Fine, then I'll sue you." I blinked. "Over what?" "You gave me a gift, then took it away. That's theft." I laughed. Actually laughed. "You threw it in the trash. In front of 20 witnesses. I took it back before anyone else did. That's called being practical." Her face went white. "I was joking," she snapped. "I'm not really going to sue, but you're still wrong. I'm your real mother, not that woman. And Sarah's the one who's been a real parent to me," I said. "You only call when you want something. That's not love, that's leverage." Brittany finally spoke up. "You're being ridiculous, Alyssa. That car should have gone to your mom. She deserves it." "No," I said, pointing to the door. "She doesn't. And you don't get to decide what I do with my money. Now both of you leave." They didn't move at first. But eventually they left, slamming the door behind them like it proved something. I stood in the hallway for a long minute, heart pounding. Then I locked the door, double deadbolt, and walked away. That was 8 months ago. Since then, I haven't heard from my mother. Not once. No calls, no emails, no surprise visits. And my life? It's never been better. I spend most weekends at the lake house now. Some days I work from there, laptop on the porch, coffee in hand, sun warming my feet. Other days I just sit on the dock toes, skimming the water, wondering how I ever let her take up so much space in my heart. Sarah drives up every other week in her Corolla. She brings wine and snacks and whatever book she's reading. Sometimes we sit in silence. Other times we talk until midnight. It never feels like obligation. It feels like home. Ethan and Emma come up too. They love making s'mores by the fire pit and paddling around the lake. Last month, Ethan asked if he could propose to her here. Of course I said yes. He did it on the dock at sunset. She said yes too. We're planning the wedding now. Right here. At the house that was supposed to be a bargaining chip. A gift with strings. A guilt transaction. But it became something else instead. It became mine. Not just the deed or the furniture, but the feeling of it. Peaceful, rooted, unapologetically mine. The first weekend after Ethan and Emma's engagement, we hosted a little family dinner at the lake house. Just the four of us, me, Sarah, Ethan, and Emma, laughing over grilled salmon and fresh corn, watching the sun sink behind the trees. At one point, Sarah looked around the table and said softly, This is what it's supposed to feel like, isn't it?" And she was right. No guilt, no walking on eggshells, no one fishing for favors under the disguise of family. Just warmth, presence, safety. It didn't hit me until later that night after the dishes were done and everyone had gone to bed that I'd built something completely different from the home I grew up in. Not just physically, emotionally. My whole life I thought family was something you were born into. But it turns out, it's something you choose. And something that chooses you back. Back in Chicago, life moved forward. Work was steady, the apartment stayed clean, my phone blissfully quiet. Until one afternoon in mid-November. I was leaving Trader Joe's with a bag of groceries when I spotted her, my mother, across the street. Standing at the bus stop in a long coat, her hair grayer than I remembered, holding a purse that looked like it hadn't been replaced in years. For a moment, she didn't see me. But when she did, she froze. We locked eyes. No smile, no wave, just silence. Then she looked away. I stood there for a moment, unsure what to feel. Pity, anger, sadness, but mostly I felt nothing. Not coldness, not cruelty. Just a kind of emotional distance that comes when you've finally closed the book, not slammed it shut, but finished the last chapter and set it gently aside. She didn't cross the street. She didn't call out. She got on the bus and I kept walking. Sarah heard about it a few days later when we were decorating the porch for winter. "Do you think she regrets it?" she asked me, hanging a wreath on the railing. "I think she regrets losing control," I said. "But not losing me." Sarah nodded. She didn't try to convince me otherwise. That's what I love about her. She doesn't pretend. She doesn't rewrite reality to make it easier to swallow. She accepts it, like I've learned to do. We went back to wrapping lights around the columns, the lake shimmering behind us. Later that night, I posted a photo of the porch glowing with twinkle lights and captioned it, "The holidays hit different when you're surrounded by people who actually want to be there. Grateful always." Again, I didn't name names, but again, people knew. And slowly, I noticed something odd. Old acquaintances, some who used to side with my mom, started messaging me. "I had no idea what you were going through. I used to think she just wanted to be close to you. Now I get it." It wasn't validation I needed, but it still felt freeing. Like I wasn't crazy for drawing that boundary. Like the silence had spoken louder than anything I could have said out loud. By spring, Ethan and Emma had picked a wedding date. August, right at the lake house. We planned every detail together: flowers on the dock, fairy lights through the trees, tables out on the lawn under the stars. Dad helped build a wooden arch by the water. Sarah picked out napkin colors with Emma. I handled the menu. And the whole time I kept thinking this would have been impossible with her in the picture. The entitlement, the chaos, the need to control every moment. She would have made it about her. But this was about joy, shared joy, without expectation or obligation or manipulation. Just love. And even though she never called again, never emailed, never sent a card, I realized something important. I didn't need her to apologize. I didn't need closure, because I'd already found something better. Peace. Real quiet, grounded peace. On the night of Ethan's wedding, after the toasts and cake and dancing, I stood alone for a moment on the dock looking out over the water. The string lights shimmered above me. Music floated from the backyard. Laughter, too. And I thought back to that moment months ago when I stood on this same dock with a velvet box in my hand and heartbreak in my chest. I didn't know it then, but that moment wasn't about losing something. It was about reclaiming it. My time, my boundaries, my worth. And as I stood there watching my brother hold his new wife under the stars, I realized this lake house had given me more than I ever thought it would. Not just freedom from the past, but a future I could finally believe in. Story 2. My son murmured, "I don't think any sound will ever haunt me more than the quiet way." "Why doesn't Grandpa like me, Mommy?" He was seated on the rear veranda, wearing the small red jacket he cherished, the one with the ripped sleeve, knees drawn up to his chest. His face was pale, his lip was quivering, and he hadn't touched his plate, all of which I hadn't had time to sew. It didn't have much on it. I gazed at the tray, then at him. One stale piece of bread, a hard-boiled egg chilled, no water. For 2 weeks, we were residing with my folks. Only 2. I had no other options because my lease had finished early and the new location wasn't ready. It will be all right, I assured myself. It was bearable short-term. However, I neglected that what I considered tolerable meant that my son was barely living. Please leave a comment letting us know where you are viewing this video and subscribe to our channel. Neither of my parents was a monster. They were worse. They were subdued and under control. They turned civility into a weapon. They always made sure you knew where you were, but they never screamed. Something like, "You'll never be enough, but at least be useful," was something I heard growing up. Kids should feel thankful, not at ease. Avoid being theatrical. All we're doing is making you tougher. They didn't say anything aloud when I became pregnant at a young age and decided to raise my kid without consulting his father. However, every gesture, remark, and sigh all pointed to the same thing. "You failed once more, huh?" It began on the first day. My mom was already using the tight, irate circles to wipe the counters when we arrived at their house with our suitcases. She treated my son as though he were a pool of water. She needed to move around. My dad said, "Your room is upstairs," with a hardly noticeable nod. Expect little. Perhaps they simply needed time, I reasoned. They didn't. They had prepared their own breakfast when I arrived downstairs the following morning. Orange juice toast, scrambled eggs, and left nothing for us. Mom shrugged when I asked. "We assumed you would look after yourselves." Jamie, my kid, was 5 years old. He couldn't figure out why he wasn't given a plate. I handed him my purse's apple. My father was standing near the refrigerator later that day. Crossed arms. Jamie was attempting to open it. "Where are you heading, in your opinion?" my father said. Jamie stopped. "I only intended to get yogurt. Do you think this is a free place to grow food?" He lost his temper. He's simply hungry. I intervened and said. After glancing at me, my father remarked, "Teach him how hunger works. Let him find a dumpster if he wants to eat." I blinked. "What?" He said it again. Look for a dumpster. My mother then burst out laughing. She laughed quietly and icily, like if she were watching a sitcom rather than loudly. Jamie didn't weep. He simply took a step back, folded his hands in his lap, and sat on the floor. I took a while to react. I have no idea why. Perhaps because I was shocked. Perhaps because I had lived my entire life trying to convince myself that things weren't all that horrible, that they simply did it that way. However, Jamie asked me that evening, "Why is Grandpa not fond of me?" I felt everything break inside of me. I refrained from screaming. I didn't leave all at once. I deliberated, waited, and chose precisely what I would discard first. The following morning, I left before anybody else was finished making Jamie toast, packing our luggage, wrapping him in blanket, and giving him his favorite cereal bar, despite the fact that it was my last one. After that, I went through every room in the home and tossed everything out. Methodically, not in a fit of wrath or destruction. They refused to share the fruit. Lost. They once forbade Jamie from touching the ancient blankets on the couch for fear that he might destroy them. I gave them all of the files I had arranged 2 nights prior, tore up the old pictures of me on the wall in the hallway. They tore up the ones where I was grinning but had bruises on my arms that they believed no one could notice. I kept their valuables safe. Their furnishings was not touched by me. However, I had given that house everything I ever had. Silence, work, and love. I took it out. After that, I grabbed Jamie's hand and left the room. I didn't bid them farewell. I didn't even shut the door after myself. Since the house was never open to you in the first place, why would you close it? We slept in my car outside a motel 2 days later. It wasn't glitzy. Not only that, but was cold. But we owned it. I had sold some items that were in storage, items that were memoryless. I managed to eke out a week at a low-cost extended stay. The kitchenette has stains on it. Despite the thin sheets, Jamie grinned at seeing the tiny refrigerator. He pointed to a plastic-wrapped muffin I had purchased from the gas station and said, "Mommy, is that for me?" Like he was afraid the answer may still be no. He inquired. I suppressed my emotions and nodded. "Yours alone, sweetie." I realized then that it had nothing to do with punishing my parents. Cutting the umbilical cord they put around my throat and referred to as a family was the goal. It was about making sure my son never had to bear that burden again. I never contacted them. Not once, not to elaborate, not to argue, not even 3 days later when my mother texted me. "If nothing else, let us know where you put Dad's pension forms. They were being arranged by you." Then another. "I owned the sewing machine you took. Even though I hadn't taken anything, it felt ironic that they believed I had taken something insignificant after everything they had emotionally drained from me." I remembered that file, his pension documents, but I didn't respond. I refused to accept it. I did spill coffee on it when I left it behind. I didn't remove it, but I also didn't do it purposefully. A week went by. A woman named Krista, a buddy from my early years, called me. She stated that they needed assistance with administrative tasks, snack preparation, and weekend coverage at a nearby after-school center. I accepted the position with the minimum wage, short hours, and honest labor. Jamie was liked by the children. They gave him human treatment. Not trash, not a visitor, not a burden. He blossomed. I located the small basement apartment. 1 window, 2 towns. The faucet is rusted. But we established a pattern. Jamie learned how to scramble eggs from me. I learned how to fold a paper swan from him. It was everything I had never had, even though it wasn't much. I listened to Kristen's stories as they came in. Just facts, no rumors. To turn in his paperwork, my dad had gone to his retirement financial planner. He was informed that the copies were not complete. He had to rewrite the forms because of the missing stains on the signature, but the original copies were lost for some reason. That wasn't something I had planned, but I also didn't regret it. He was required to personally visit the county office and refile everything. He didn't know how, though, since I had been filling out the applications for 30 years. The appointment was scheduled by me. My mother had been calling me a freeloader under her breath when I had written the checks. The home was being held up like scaffolding by me. They had to do everything by themselves now. They had persuaded me of my worthlessness for their entire lives. They were now able to experience life without me. I ran across my mom at a corner store a month later. At first, she didn't recognize me. I had my hair tied back. I wore a coat that I borrowed. Jamie was by my side, but I was carrying a bag of cheap groceries. Tall, self-assured, and in good health. Her face twitched at the sight of him. She took a step forward as if to speak or perhaps to show concern. Then Jamie came up behind me, dropped her hand, and didn't even look at her or say anything. She said, "You look different." I simply grinned. Her mouth parted and then closed as I finally ate. As I passed her and made my cash payment, she stood motionless in the doorway. The same money they told I would never make. A year has passed with 12 peaceful months of development, healing, and calm. Jamie didn't hear much about my parents from me. I didn't volunteer and he didn't ask. Every time I cooked quick pancakes, he called me Chef Mommy and spent his time learning the alphabet and catching grasshoppers in the neighborhood park. Although we didn't have much, I had at last created a house where love wasn't rationed like oxygen, where food didn't feel like a luxury, and where stillness didn't feel like a threat. I then received a call from an unidentified number one afternoon. I nearly disregarded it, but I felt compelled to respond. "Hello," a rigid voice said. Is this my dad? Erica?" His breath sounded hollow to me, as if he had practiced the call, but was still unsure of how to complete it. I remained silent. That gave him the go-ahead to continue. "Would you kindly subscribe to our channel and let us know where you are viewing this video? Your mother fell last week and I thought you would want to know. Broke her hip. He faded off and I've been trying to sort this out. We're not as young as we once were, you know." It was there. The wording's subtle hook and angle. He wasn't phoning to say sorry. They needed something, which is why he was calling. His voice tightened as he went on. "I don't know how to file her medical insurance. You've always taken care of that. Perhaps you might stop over and lend a hand if you had a few minutes." I ended the call. Not anger, not fear, nor tears. A single, fluid click. I put down the phone and looked at the wall for a while. Jamie and I sat on the floor that night while we opened a package beneath the bed. It contained documents, letters, and pictures that I hadn't seen in more than a year. I selected one picture in particular. 7-year-old me wearing an apron, pouring soup into 3 bowls while standing near the kitchen table. Not one of them is mine. My dad wrote the caption, "Our little helper, finally earning her keep." I threw it in the garbage. Jamie took a quick look. "Was that you?" I gave a nod. "That image bothers me." "I don't either." I carried a clean envelope to the bus stop the following morning. I didn't use attorneys to exact retribution. I didn't go to court with them. I didn't arrive with a confrontation or a camera. Rather, I deposited a single envelope containing a printed list through the mail slot on their front door. I had paid the rent for each item without any items. I was informed that I owed grocery costs. Hours spent providing care were recorded while my brother played video games. The $250 I lent them from my college refund check, the supper my dad flung across the room because I used the good plate, and the night I skipped prom because my mother needed the bathroom to herself. My spine was bruised when they struck me with the belt. "Serve him, for he is your brother," I typed at the bottom. "This represents your entire balance. Paid in full. Don't get in touch with me again. Nothing more." I know they opened it, but I never received a response. I am aware of this because 2 weeks later, Krista called to report that she had witnessed my mother hobbling through the pharmacy by herself while straining to open the door. Nobody came to her aid, as well as my dad. With a scrawled notepad in hand, he arrived at the community financial office and begged the clerk to assist me identify the paperwork my daughter used to complete. "He appeared to be a ghost," she remarked. "Jamie turns 8 today. When he finishes reading a chapter book by himself, he puts the leftovers in the refrigerator and remarks, 'We save food in this house, right?' 'Yes,' I tell him, as we are aware of its value. Grandpa told him to eat from a dumpster that day, but I remember it. He doesn't. We cook in the kitchen, which is now devoid of everything from my previous home. Not even a crumb, not a plate, not a spoon. I tossed it all out.